Good afternoon. Welcome to MIDC's Walks+Talks series. My name is Mark Rupert, and I'll be your host this afternoon. The topic of today's talk will be modular and offsite construction. Giving the talk today is our guest, Michel Hanna. Michel is Group GM at Speed House Group. Speed House Group provides a variety of building solutions, modular and offsite construction being among them. Thank you for taking time to speak with us today, Michel. Before we get started, I want to make a note that you can submit your questions anytime during the talk. At the end of the talk, we'll have a questions and answers session where I'll try to get as many of your questions in as possible. Michel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for hosting me. This is going to be a presentation, just like you mentioned, regarding modular and offsite construction. Especially that we've been seeing it picking up a lot in our region. And we're just going to be going through a brief history of modular construction, the difference between prefab, modular, how we've been benefiting from all this change in technology in construction. And like you said, I'm happy to take up any questions later on as we go. So if you don't mind, I'm going to be sharing a presentation. It does say 53 slides, but a lot of it is just images and pictures. So we'll be going through this quickly. So this is a presentation that I've put together. I'll start off with just quickly describing, giving some background about our company. Speed House, Mark, just to confirm, can you see the presentation? Great. Basically, Speed House started off back in 1974, where our initial mandate was to build prefab structures, find quicker methods of construction and all that. And since 1974, I mean, over the last 46 years, we've been developing the company, developing the product and developing new markets as demand comes in and as the market situations changes. Today we operate on 962,000 square feet plot of land. All our factories are in one place. We have many common services among the different factories, but each one of our companies has its own independent legal and management structure. And our products range from modular and prefab, civil construction, fit out, woodworks, kitchen pods, and many other products that we'll be going through. Back in 1993, Speed House managed to enter the Guinness Book of Records for the world's largest mobile caravan. This is an image of the unit that made it to the Guinness Book. Basically, a 3-story plus roof mobile house, and still up and running since 1993. Today, the group consists of 10 companies, everything related to the construction and offsite construction industry. We also believe that a very big and important part of modular construction and prefab construction is to be able to control your supply chain. This is why through Speed House Trading, we also represent a lot of the world-leading brands when it comes to raw material and use them both in our production and as products to be sold in the market. Let's move to prefab. One of the biggest problems we see, or one of the biggest confusions we see in our industry, is the definition of prefab, modular, offsite are all used in the same terminology, but the reality of the situation is that they're three completely different things with certain common ground. So prefab, you can think of prefab or prefabricated construction as the main title. And under that main title, many things fall, things like modular construction, offsite construction, 3D printing, and all the rest of those different terminologies used all fall under prefab. Basically, prefab is a method of construction that is becoming and picking up in demand in our region. It's just the process of looking into a building and seeing how many elements of this building or structure can be manufactured within a controlled factory space and transported and installed at site. The different types, which we'll also go through 4, 5, 6 different types of prefab construction. A project can have a combination of those different types, or maybe one of those types being used in the construction project, but it all depends on the location of the project, the speed and requirement where the project needs to be executed, and budgets and all the rest of that. So there is no one size fits all, and sometimes it's a combination of all the different prefab methodologies that go within one project. History of prefab. So prefab construction has been around since the Roman days. Castles and forts used some sort of prefab construction. The Eiffel Tower was constructed using prefabricated metal elements that were assembled at site. And the real test for prefab came along when post World War II, when a lot of buildings needed to come up as quickly as possible, whether it was hospitals, whether it was police stations, government buildings, housing and residential projects. So and there was a lot of damage that happened then, and this was one of the quick ways to get things done. So prefab is a quick build solution, and we were just seeing prefab and the manufacturing process developing year after year. And the last 10 years, we've probably seen more development than in the last 50 years when it comes to methodologies of production and use of prefab. The different types of prefab, like we said, so prefab is the main title. We have modular buildings, we have 3D printed buildings or elements that are done offsite. We have the 2D panelized construction methodology. We have bathroom and kitchen pods. Flat packs, foldable buildings are also a different type of prefab methodology. Ready portable buildings where all you need to do is just deploy it on site and can be immediately used. You don't need to do any other connections or anything. And there are other minor speed prefab elements that get used. I'll start off with today's hottest topic of the world, which is modular buildings. Modular buildings are basically dismantling the design of a building and trying to fit it into boxes, standard sized boxes, which enables you to produce a building and then assemble it at site, just like a car manufacturing plant operates. Like you can see in those images, you have each one of those boxes or modules, like they're called, represent one part of a building, maybe a bedroom or part of a bedroom, a kitchen, a laundry area, a corridor, or even a service area. The image on the right shows an image of an actual unit being completed in the factory. You see the cladding at the outside, you see the aluminium and glass, you can see the lights working because everything goes into the building, the lights, the furniture, into the module. everything goes into that. The lights, the steel, the glass, the fit out, the external claddings, all that can be done and assembled in the factory, while other elements are being prepared on site to be able to take these modules and have them stacked on top of each other. So modules like this can end up looking like this. This is how a building, may it be a single story structure or 29, 30, 40 story structure. This is how these elements are just carried using cranes, placed where they need to be, and then connected mechanically to the rest of the building structure. You can see here some buildings. These are renders of buildings that have been executed in the US using modular construction. And once the building is completed, you cannot tell the difference between a construction or a project that was developed using traditional methods of construction or one that has used and taken advantage of modular construction. So this is more or less what modular buildings would look like. Basically, a full module of different sizes. These sizes range and are usually limited to transportation restrictions. Fully manufactured and finished in the factory, and then just assembled on site till we get the complete building. Another type which has been in discussions a lot these days is 3D printing. Although a lot of the 3D printing we know of today is being done on site, but it is a method of construction that has revolutionized the industry, and in a lot of places is being used to participate in manufacturing building elements that are also transported and assembled on site with much less workforce, with a much smaller impact of sound and pollution on site. You can see at the bottom left an image of a walkway or a bridge that was manufactured in a factory and then installed on site. The next system, which is probably a more common system being used in our region, in the Middle East and North Africa, is the panelized system, where transportation is a restriction. The way this is done is, instead of taking that modular box and having to transport a box, you dismantle the whole thing into wall elements, and again install everything that needs to go in it, from the insulation to the paint, aluminium and glass. All electrical connections come in place, and they can be placed on specially manufactured racks and installed immediately at site. This is also another method that reduces time, cost, and a lot of and increases the efficiency of manufacturing manufacturing and construction on site. Bathroom and kitchen pods. As you can see, when buildings need to be manufactured for whatever reason, and usually the reason is due to delays in designs and coordinations, when a building needs to be done and manufactured and contracted traditionally, you can still use certain offsite constructed elements and incorporate them in your building. Elements like bathroom and kitchen pods can be used. The top right and the bottom left image are actual pods, just like the bottom right image, where these are elements that have been constructed inside, in the factory, and shipped ready to site with all accessories installed in them, electricity, water, and everything. And once they're installed in the building, all they do is just clad around them, and you have a ready kitchen or bathroom to use. This is a method that has proven to reduce the time impact of any construction project by at least 10 to 12%, and helps in getting the building handed over. And let's say if it was a hotel, helps you start generating income in your hotel or hospital at least 3 to 4 months, 2 to 4 months, let's say, earlier than any other method of construction. Flat packs are usually used in locations where transport, infrastructure, and speed are of the essence. You basically receive a box to your site, and once that box is dismantled, everything comes into that box: the windows, the doors, the walls, the electrical connections. And these buildings are also stackable. These buildings can go up to 4, 5, or even 6 stories, and width and length can vary to the client's demand and requirement. Portable buildings, like we were saying, are those buildings that could just be carried out of the factory and placed on site. All you need to do is just hook up electricity, water, and sewage, and there you go. Your accommodation unit is ready. Top right is an image in our factory for the different modules that we have ready, and then these can get shipped out with whatever look, feel, and requirement the client may need. Again, the restriction with these modules or this type of prefab construction is basically your transportation limitations. There's a maximum width and a maximum height you can transport anything on a truck on, and this is where we need to abide by these rules and regulations. Other prefab elements that go into buildings are hospital headboards, offsite constructed MEP and HVAC racks. We're seeing these demands come in to play in many projects due to delays in execution and speed and required speed in handing over such projects. And that's basically the 5 or 6 different, 7 different types of prefab construction. I'm sure there are many people that can probably add on to this, but these are the main elements that fall under prefab construction. Advantages of modular construction, which I think is key in today's construction world, are the following. You can design those units to look the way you want, the finishing you want, and for the use that you want. There is no doubt the usage of such technology can speed up the process of construction on site. You can always produce them in a way so that they adapt to the location and place that they're going to. Cost saving is probably one of the most controversial points over here, because when it comes to costing, the way you save here is when you look at a project from an end-to-end perspective. So maybe if you go and look at an item-to-item comparison, traditional construction might seem to be cheaper. But when you look at the overall construction timeline of the project and how much time goes into snagging and rectifying traditionally constructed buildings, you will realize that eventually the use of such methods of construction assist in saving a lot of costs and generating earlier income as well to a project. Ease of transportation, these can be loaded, the different types of them can be loaded into a truck, onto a train. We've shipped military units on planes before to different countries. And of course, the most obvious method of them all, which is once we're crossing from continent to continent through ships and barges and the rest of that. Modular buildings can also adapt to many uses, like we said, may it be hospitals, hotels, and many other uses and usages of buildings. The process. here is where patience needs to come into place. When using modular construction, it's very important to have the design and engineering team involved from the beginning and take your time in design and engineering and scrutinizing any detail that you may require. Because once you hit that go button, I mean, you start production in masses. There are projects, one of the most recent projects we've completed consisted of over 2,200 modules, out of which maybe 1,200 were repetitive modules. Once you give the green light to production, we should do whatever is possible to avoid any changes. This is why the design process might take slightly longer. The design and engineering process might take slightly longer than traditional construction, but people involved in the industry know that the more time you spend on engineering and design, the better the end result and the quicker the overall process of the construction to happen. Today, with technologies like BIM and other softwares out there, site installation, transportation, and all the rest, that becomes quite easy to coordinate with the site and the factory, and you will just be receiving the modules on time, when needed, whenever needed, to avoid any traffic on the roads or avoid any pollution or reduce pollution as much as possible on sites. Applicable areas: clinics, hospitals, military units and military camps, quick deployment locations. Disaster relief camps has definitely been a very big an industry or a market that has benefited a lot from modular construction. We've seen a lot of residential buildings come out of modular construction, offices, warehouses, accommodation camps, and even event pavilions. Things like Expo 2020 have also embraced the use of prefab and modular construction in a very big way. The COVID situation and the pandemic, no doubt, was a blessing in disguise for the modular industry. Yes, a lot of sites were shut down. Yes, a lot of places had to stop working. But with what we saw in field hospitals and test centers, if it wasn't for modular construction, the whole pandemic would have been probably managed in a different way. This is an example of a field hospital in Turkey, a capacity of over 1,000 beds that was completed in 45 days. Anybody in this industry knows that any such building using traditional methods of construction probably would not have been finished in less than 800 days. Another Wuhan, where the outbreak initially happened, we see another 1,000 bed hospital that was put up in just 10 days. A second one of a 1,600 bed facility came up in 20 days. Again, all using modular construction, pre-fitted out modules, delivered to site, installed and commissioned in record times in order to be able to answer to any emergency situation out there. This is something that Speedhouse worked on, which is a design out of Italy. This had a very sentimental value, as everybody read and saw. Many people lost their loved ones without even being able to say goodbye due to accessibility to hospitals and ICUs. What Cura did and what Cura designed was extensions to existing hospitals using converted shipping containers, where each one of those shipping containers was turned into a negative pressure isolated intensive care unit. And people were able to come and walk in the parkings of these hospitals and see their loved ones through those large glass panels, which was something which would have not been possible because of having limited or close to impossible access inside hospitals, and definitely no access into intensive care units due to the widespread and danger of the coronavirus. So this was an example. These are some images out of our factory in the UAE, where we manufactured some of these products, and they were featured on the World Economic Forum conferences. From what you've seen, there are many different options that you can use in finishing modules, depending on budgets, depending on end use, and depending on the lifespan required. What we don't compromise, or what the industry does not compromise, is the actual box that you're using. This is usually made up to standards, and not many alterations can happen to that. But when it comes to finishing, whether you want to finish a floor with marble or vinyl, or finish a wall with cement board or any other type of material, you have no issues at all. The finished product can look and feel the way the client would like it to be. Again, with the flooring, whether it's GRP lining and epoxy, tiled floors, or just vinyl floors, you can pick whichever finishing type you'd like. Speedhouse, and how we managed to take advantage, or why we pushed and pursued with the modular construction. Back in 2008, when the financial crisis happened, a lot of markets were shut down. And there is no doubt that the construction sector, just like the financial sector, was one of the key markets that got hit by this financial crisis. What we wanted to do back then was, we couldn't change the industry that we were already in, but what we needed to do was we needed to expand. We needed to set up newer markets and not be limited to a small geographic area. That's when we did a lot of research and realized how much advantage modular construction can have. And by using modular and prefab construction, we were able to export our products to over, I think, 35 different countries. Today, we ship building elements or full buildings all the way from Australia to the UK, many CIS countries, our region, and most recently of all, I think today or tomorrow, that those units should be reaching the Caribbean, where we've even sent accommodation units to the Caribbean, and they're going to be installed there. This is something that to us as Speedhouse feel is an achievement. We've been able to export houses, not export just any product that could fit in a container. We are able now to say that we could take up any housing project anywhere in the world, as long as there is ship or air access to that location. Some recently completed projects by Speedhouse. This is a building that was completed in 26 days. Again, full use of modular and prefab construction. This was a combination between prefabricated panels, so the 2D systems, modular construction, as well as offsite constructed bathroom pods and MEP modules. This whole building, including finishing and fit out, was completed in 26 days. This is another building in Dubai, in City Walk, with all the interior design, landscape, civil works, and everything was completed in a period of 75 days. These are some of the images on the inside, just to show you the levels of finishing that you could achieve. And this is one of the projects that we're extremely proud of and should be handed over to our client over the next couple of days. This is a 5,000 man city that was manufactured in Ajman, exported to the site in Saudi Arabia, and installed in a period of 180 days. This included everything from accommodation units, kitchens, laundries, and when I say, I mean several kitchens, several laundries, several bank buildings, gyms, and all the rest of that, all constructed off-site and assembled on the site in Saudi Arabia. Some images from that project in our factory before loading and shipping. And these are some images from the site. Here you see a very nice project as well that was executed in Saudi Arabia, an 800 square meter presidential suite. Several of those were done, where it took us 12 days to manufacture, 5 days for transportation, and 15 days for assembly and finishing on site. And these are modules, 26 different modules that were shipped out of the UAE and traveled a distance of 2,084 kilometers from the factory to the site and assembled over there. So the top images show you the images in our factory where the units are being prepared and finished. And the bottom right image shows you the site where all 26 modules were dismantled in the UAE and then reassembled in Saudi Arabia. Some additional images for the interior and exterior look. Again, another project which was transported 2,310 kilometers from our factory to the site. Actually, it also did a trip by boat because this is an island. So the trucks traveled 2,300 kilometers, then went onto special barges and had another 45-minute sail into in the ocean to this island where they were assembled and completed. This was a quick overview of our understanding of modular. Let me say, there might be people out there that agree with what I've said, disagree with what I've said, or have a lot to add to what I've mentioned, but that's more or less what I have to present today, and I'm happy to take up any questions if anybody would like to inquire about anything.
Thanks, Michel. Great presentation, very informative and very lucid. We do have some questions here for you, so I'm just going to throw them at you one at a time. First one here, how much faster is prefab than traditional construction, and where do you see the savings? I know there's different types of prefab you're talking about, so maybe I'll let you just take your pick on how you want to bring that around. But basically, I guess the idea would be just to explain sort of where you think the savings is and if there's a way to quantify that compared to traditional construction.
There's no doubt, Mark, that when it comes to how much faster, it is considerably faster. I mean, if I'll give you ranges on different types by just using the basics in offsite construction, which is bathroom pods and kitchen pods, you can save a minimum of 10 to 15% on the time frame of a building. If you go to modular and panelized, let's take something simple as a villa. A villa that would take you 12 months to construct can be executed in a period of 2 to 3 months using modular construction. Now, where the savings come is the savings come just like in any other industry when economies of scale are there, when quantities come in, just like I mentioned during the presentation, that this becomes like a car assembly line. It's not feasible, even if you call any company today and tell them you want one car with even just changing the color of the steering wheel, you're going to be charged a very big premium because you're moving off their norm. But when it comes to mass production, this is where considerable savings can be realized, and this is where a lot of the benefits can be seen. Now, on the savings part, one hidden cost in the construction industry is always the snagging and handover period of a project. A lot of the times there are projects that are delayed in operational manners, where a hotel cannot open or a hospital cannot operate even 3 to 4 months after the construction process has been done, because problems are found with the MEP connections, the quality of tiling was not to the client's satisfaction, paint, walls, and all the rest of that. The good thing with modular construction, and that is a very big cost. I mean, when you have a 200-room hotel that cannot generate income for 3 to 4 months, that alone is a very big opportunity loss. When it comes to modular and offsite construction, these errors and mistakes are seen as you produce and not when you finish the construction process. So in many of the factories, the client has access to the factory whenever they want and before the product is delivered to site. If there is any comment, it's taken care of then and there, and there are no delays. So when the project is completed, it's ready to run. You don't need to go 3 or 4 steps back and get into the small details of rectifying minor details.
Fair enough. But you don't see the, I mean, would you not think that you're finding the same problems in the front end when you're doing it in the factory versus when you're seeing it on site? You follow me? Like a one-to-one, like if I am producing it in the factory and I have to actually go into the factory and review it, I'm going to have issues. I'll make those comments will get addressed. Is that somehow lessened than it would be if you're going in the field and you're making those same comments, but at a later date?
It's much more lessened. It's much more easier. Your whole building is being produced at ground level. When you have a building of 10 floors, just accessibility in that construction elevator going up and down and trying to visit every single floor is a nightmare. The good thing with modular construction, because it's standardized, once you put your comments on the first mock-up unit, it becomes a permanent showroom that you have for your labor, for your team, and for everybody else to know exactly what is expected from the product before it leaves. So yes, it is lessened by a huge amount. And
I'll add also to that, if you don't mind. I mean, you're in the factory, not in the field. So do you feel that you have much better quality control regarding that?
It's sad to say that probably one of the most inefficient processes in the construction site is managing labor. Being in a controlled environment, in a factory, in a shaded area, no doubt gives you much more control on all aspects, starting off with the workmanship quality, because the employee doing the scope that they do best, whether it's paint, tiling, boarding, or whatever it is doing it in a more comfortable environment for them.
Okay, thank you. Just jump into this next question for you. Let's see, what are the current, or I guess biggest, obstacles preventing implementation of prefab construction in the Middle East on a larger scale in this day, I guess?
I'm not going to be liked a lot by saying this, but we believe it's regulation. We don't have in our world, including Speedhouse. I mean, I'm not shooting any bullets in everybody's direction. It starts off with us. Not many people have been able to advance or invest in the modular construction sector because they don't see a regulation for it. So what happens is it's the chicken or the egg situation here. Which one comes first? Do you go ahead and invest millions and millions in trying to guide different authorities and legislative bodies in showing them the benefits of modular construction? Or do you wait for a mandate to come out from these bodies and then you come in and invest? It's sad to see that in our part of the world, I don't think there's a building that's more than 5 floors that has been constructed using modular methods of construction. We have those projects out there, left, right, and center, randomly accepted projects that get done. But I think the modular construction sector in the region has not even tapped its 3% potential yet.
Agreed. Next question. What stage do you like to get involved in the project in order to maximize your the modular advantage?
I think from the design stage, and many of the architects, consultants, and developers that do have experience in this field do get companies like us involved from the preliminary concept stage, so that nobody goes out of bound in their designs and expectations. So once a project is initiated or an idea is initiated, bringing in a modular contractor and just listening to them and being guided as a team all together is quite important. The earlier we get involved, the better. This does not mean that if we're not involved at the beginning, the project cannot go modular, but in a virgin market like the Middle East, where modular construction is not very common, and architects and consultants are more used to traditional methodologies of construction, it's always better that we get involved from the early stages of the project.
Okay, thank you. I have another question here for you. How much 3D construction do you see in the region at this point? It still seems to be a bit of a novelty. There's obviously a couple projects out there. There's one that's a big one in Dubai, but what are your thoughts on that, and also on its future in the region, as it were?
I believe we're at the starting stages of 3D construction. There is no doubt that 3D construction will have its days. But I think there was, again, my opinion is that there was a huge leap from traditional construction to 3D construction, and there are a lot of gaps in the middle that have not been addressed yet. When it comes to mass projects, I don't see 3D construction picking up anytime soon. But as a gimmick, as a solution, and as a technological advancement, there's no doubt that 3D construction, we'll be seeing more and more of these 3D buildings coming up in the near future. But once again, this all goes back and down to regulation, regulation, regulation. If any new methodologies of construction are to be used, we think that it's legislative bodies that need to push for this first, and then they will find many answers to those queries out there.
Okay, yeah, thank you. This sort of ties into that question a little bit, but which form of prefab construction do you feel has the most promising or exciting future of the ones you presented? Or maybe there's multiple.
I believe modular construction is definitely something that will be in the highest demand moving forward. People that follow modular news have probably read and seen that there are hotels in New York being produced in Poland and shipped to New York and installed. There are no more limitations when it comes to modular construction. Shipping and shipping lines and infrastructure is available everywhere. So we don't see any obstacles from that angle. And if we as Feedhouse were to bet on one of the different methods, it would definitely be modular construction. But by saying that, by the time you get to modular construction, you've already covered panelized construction, and you've already covered bathroom pods and kitchen pods. So the modular construction at the end of the day is just assembling those three elements together, and instead of shipping them in as three different products, they're shipped together as one module.
You've gone the next level. Yes, got it. Thank you. So having said that, let's see what other question do we have here for you. Where do you feel your best market is? Is it in country, out of country? Based on what I was seeing, I think I know what your answer is going to be, or at least in the future. But where do you feel your strongest markets are, and why? A bit of a trick question, because I think I know why you're going to say it, but I'm going to add that to the back of that question.
Mark, just like everybody knows today, to be able to sell a product, you need to find a problem and then give a solution to it. The market in the UAE over the last 15, 20, 25 years has been the prime market when it comes to construction, because the UAE was a big country, largely dispersed location, and infrastructure was not as commonly available as it is today. But today, where we believe in the region, Saudi Arabia is the place where this type of product will be in high demand for many reasons. Number one, due to the size of the projects. Number two, due to the geographic distance between factories and sites in Saudi Arabia. Number three, you have a lot of work happening on islands today and developments happening on islands. And with the mandates that the PIF and the Saudi government have put into place, environmental impact is probably one of the most important matters that they need to look at. I'm sure they wouldn't want concrete batching plants and mixers on every single one of those islands and affecting the whole environmental and ecosystem of the project. So we do believe over the next 5 to 10 years, Saudi Arabia will be the biggest market when it comes to all the construction sector, but specifically in our case to modular construction.
And how do you feel about more worldwide reaching in terms of, I guess, there's economic shifts, right, where different values are on different components, i.e. manpower might be more expensive, or say the UK for instance. Do you find that it might be something somewhere and that would, those kinds of places would be get a great value from you as well in terms of shipping? Like you were showing some of a wide range of locations you were shipping to. So
we ship
market.
Yeah. Yes, Australia and New Zealand, Mark, are quite important markets. Every market has its advantages due to certain, again, we go back to legislation. Unions in certain countries affect the construction sector. So having offsite construction reduces the impact of the unions on the sector. In places like Africa, it's the lack of skilled manpower, for example, that brings you into place. They do have maybe cheaper manpower than we have in our region, but they don't have the skills that this region shows you. In Saudi Arabia, it's the volume. They need volume in Saudi Arabia. So this is why Saudi Arabia is an opportunity. And the UK and Europe in general, we're exporting to Germany, we're exporting to Denmark, we're exporting to the UK, again, because of taxations, because of high manpower costs and all that. We think, again, this is why we, in 2008, took a decision to find ways to export our product, because in every single market, you will find an advantage and you will find a strategic partner that will want to give you a shot. But when it comes to volume, Saudi Arabia and Africa are the markets of the future. From a humanitarian perspective, Mark, it is no longer accepted that you see people living in tents, that you see people living in unhealthy and unsanitized accommodation premises. So housing, we believe, is one of the world's largest problems. And there are a lot of houses needed out there, especially in the African continent and many places close to it.
Brilliant. Thank you for that answer. Let's see what we've got here now. So with the different products that you were showing incredibly fast construction or completion times. But I'm going to just clarify, and you did clarify it on a few of these objects, but a few of these projects. But this was just construction time, right? The design, the product was brought to the site, and then the assembly was the time frames you were showing, because they were incredibly fast time frames, especially for the Chinese hospitals. That was remarkable.
So Mark, we're like the magicians over here. You don't know what the magician has inside that black box he has, but then all of a sudden a rabbit comes out, right? It's a lot of work happens back end that you do not see, and this is where whenever we say 10 days, 15 days, and all the rest of that, there's probably several months or weeks before that behind closed doors, getting things designed and manufactured before things happen on site. But we also need to remember that the advantage of that is no construction site can start building today. There's a lot of infrastructure work that is needed. And the advantage with modular construction is that you can start your buildings or parts of your buildings while that necessary infrastructure is being done on site. May it be excavation, may it be the concrete and the foundations, the piling, and all the rest of that. You do not lose out on that period by having to wait to come in and build your buildings on top of the infrastructure needed.
Can run it in parallel. Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you for that. Okay, here's another one for you. When you connect a series of fully completed modules, what, if any, additional on-site work is required between the external walls and roof of adjacent modules? Are additional materials required? That's a wide-ranging question right there. But I'll let you take a.
No, but I think I understand. I think I understand the question. There are always things that need to be done on site. And probably the most critical part of all this is in the assembly process is joining the modules together and making sure they're both airtight, watertight, properly sealed, and everything. Now, for example, let's say the maximum width allowable for transportation is 3 meters, and you have a room which is 6 meters wide. There's no doubt you still need to come in and do all the joints and close all the joints on site. But what modular construction does for you is guarantees you a minimum of 85% of the work being done off-site. You will always need to do certain works on site, but these become very minor compared to the overall construction job that needs to be done. Yes, you will need additional material. Yes, you will need additional chemicals to close and isolate different modules from each other, and the final test run on every single module once they're there. Yeah, all these things will be needed on site. It's not just a box that you're buying, putting in place, and just opening the door and using.
And if you're doing a large building, for instance, you would have to put in the stacks, the MEP stacks and whatnot independently, and then connect them in, things like that.
And the riser shafts and all that. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, here's a classic question for you. I think we'll end it on that one. I think that's the last one we've got here. Modular mass production can limit the design forum. To what extent do you think that this could be true? And what are the limitations that you would have before taking on a project?
Again, I believe the biggest obstacle we have for that is transportation guidelines, whether it comes to height or width or length. If you're using road transport, your maximum width you can go for is 4 meters, maximum length is 15 meters, and maximum height is probably 3.5 to 4 meters. If you're using ship transportation, so the way we do it, and maybe this would answer the question rightfully, and this would also come back to the point that you asked me, Mark, as in when we would like to be involved in the project. The first thing we come and do is, after understanding the nature of the project and after understanding the project location, is give the client, architect, or designer the module parameters. and ask them to design their building around those parameters, whether it's a 6 meter by 3.5 meter box or a 12 meter by 4 meter box. We'd always start off with the box size, and then the box as in the module size, and then take things on from there. Yes, just like everything, there are limitations, but those limitations are always set with the location. Sometimes you don't even have roads, Mark. I mean, we've done projects where certain modules needed to come in via helicopter, and then that's another limitation you have, which is the weight. Not only the size, but even the weight of the module. So each site, each project, each geographic location has its constraints, but those parameters are not major compared to the initial design or idea the client has in mind.
Thank you, Michel. Thank you very, very much. I'm out of questions. Do you have anything you want to add to that, or anything else you want to throw in?
We do see what we weren't able to achieve over the last 5 years in client acceptance of modular construction. We see happening now with the different type of projects and with the new site restrictions due to the pandemic. Every developer and every contractor wants less people at site. They want a quicker turnaround of the project. They want higher quality. So with all these parameters, we're starting to see an indirect way of people saying, okay, we want modular construction, but we don't know how to tackle the issue. We all need to be patient and open-minded. And I believe the next 10 years of construction are definitely where the modular construction is going to shine most.
I agree. Thank you very much. Well, I guess that's the wrap up of our walk and talk today. I want to thank you, Michel Hanna, very much for the talk. It was very informative, and I hope that I'm sure everybody enjoyed the talk. And I guess we'll see everybody at the next MIDC talk.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you for having me, and thank you for organizing this. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Michel. You too.
Bye.